In 2014, a drastic shift took place in the Marvel Universe. The once powerful, brave, and confident Thor was rendered unworthy by a whisper, unable to lift his mighty hammer. Day after day, night after night, he tries to lift Mjolnir, but to no avail. Unfortunately, frost giants and Malekith invade Earth to find a powerful artifact, and the unworthy Thor fails to save the day. But then, as all hope seems to be lost, a mystery woman picks up Mjolnir, and although inexperienced, she defeats the frost giants on Roxxon's airbase, using Mjolnir's thunderous power and her new god-like strength. In Thor's 2014 comic series, Mjolnir seems to have a mind of its own, tearing through enemies with the greatest of ease without the owner's control. But its sentience is also evident in the fact that Mjolnir decided not to be with Thor, Odin's son. For some weird reason, it chooses to be with this mystery woman instead. And when Thor finds out, he fumes with rage. I mean, of course he does. He spent years with this hammer. Mjolnir is not just a strong weapon he's wielded. It carries sentimental value for him. Years of experience, good and bad, all represented by this hammer. Thor gets into a fight with this new female Thor to reclaim what he thinks is rightfully his, only to find out that she really is worthy. The hammer is doing things he has never seen it do before. And of course, the original Thor sinks into depression as he woefully acknowledges this new Thor's worthiness. But who the heck is this new Thor? How is she worthy? Who was this new goddess of thunder, able to unlock new abilities in such an old weapon? In the comic, the original Thor and Odin both separately try to find out who this new goddess of thunder is, but she's so secretive about it. Even after Odinson comes to help save this new Thor against the Destroyer, she is not willing to reveal her true identity. It's clear that she dearly respects Odinson. I mean, she flipping kisses him when he asks if she's his mom. It's clear that this new Thor deeply admires the previous one. But what is holding her back from revealing her identity? Well, in the end of Thor 2014 issue 8, the identity of this new Thor is revealed as she flies to Asgard despite being told not to, due to her controversial reputation over there. I hide because I won't be stopped, and they would try to stop me if they ever learned the truth. The world needs a Thor. That's all that really matters. We need a god who understands what it means to be humbled, to be mortal. A god who knows how precious life is, how delicate. A god who struggles every day to live a worthy life, who suffers so that no one else will have to. A god who loves the earth enough to die for it. I am Dr. Jane Foster, and I will not stop being the mighty Thor, even though it is killing me. The comic I've touched on in this video is the series Thor, which was published in 2014 and contained 8 issues. But this was only the beginning of an iconic series by writer Jason Aaron and illustrator Russel Dauterman. The comic would be relaunched as The Mighty Thor a few months later, but instead of the comic being all secretive about Thor's identity, it centers on the character of Jane Foster, who's better than you think. But let's go back to her quote a while ago. I am Dr. Jane Foster, and I will not stop being the mighty Thor, even though it is killing me. Why is the role of Thor killing Jane Foster? Well, in the previous series, we see Thor Odinson visit Jane Foster to see if she might be the new Thor, but he crosses her out of his personal list of suspects when he's reminded that she has breast cancer that the Asgardians aren't able to cure because Jane doesn't want any magical treatment for her illness. It turns out that Jane, despite having cancer, is Thor. And because she is Thor, chemotherapy is failing. It turns out that whenever she picks up Mjolnir and her body transforms, the medicine in her body that's designed to kill the cancer is eliminated. Each time she reverts back to Jane Foster, no progress in eliminating the cancer is made. Her body is weaker because of the lack of treatment, and the cancer grows. What makes the Mighty Thor series from 2014 to 2018 interesting is not the fact that she is mighty. Jane Foster is incredibly weak, dying as days go by, and whenever she suits up, she sacrifices and jeopardizes her own health. In the comic, Thor deals with an Asgardian civil war, fights the freaking Phoenix Force, battles a war-hungry Volstagg with a special hammer of his own, all while suffering through a worsening breast cancer. Is the series perfect? Not really. It might be a bit too on the nose with the girl power stuff sometimes, and there are some filler issues that feel pointless. But overall, I enjoyed the comic. Side characters like Agent Solomon, Queen Freya, and the original Thor are charming as hell, and I love the Goddess of Thunder's interactions with everybody. But the real highlight of the series is the final arc, the death of the mighty Thor, which is by a wide margin the best part of the series as a whole. Everything comes to a climax as the bloodthirsty god-killing beast known as Mangog crushes Nasher's head with his bare fist and batters the mighty War Thor to a pulp. His next stop? Asgard. Meanwhile, Jane is on her last legs at a hospital. The doctor tells her that if she changes to Thor one more time, she will die when she reverts back to Jane Foster. We see Mangog invade Asgard, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. He shatters the Rainbow Bridge and stabs the eyes of Heimdall the All-Seeing, turning him blind. Mangog destroys the Destroyer, tearing its arm off through the sheer power of its teeth. Even Odin and Odin's son, gods of the highest status, can't manage to beat him. Then, Jane does it. She picks up the hammer boldly despite being bound to die, turning into Thor for one final time. It is an inspiring, epic, and heartbreaking story that is gut-wrenching and tear-inducing. A tale that left me flabbergasted when I read it early last year and still left me astonished when I reread it for this video. It is freaking cool, and I will not spoil it any further because I want to leave you guys hyped so you would read it yourself. You know what else I was hyped for though? Thor, Love and Thunder. I was fortunate enough to be brought to that film by relatives last year, thank you by the way, and the trailer made the movie seem like it was gonna be one hell of a ride. I'm a person who likes most of the MCU, even gaining some enjoyment out of the critically mixed films. And even though Thor, Love and Thunder was an engaging watch for me, it wasn't a movie I really enjoyed. I had absolutely no idea what to think of it when I first saw it, and upon a rewatch, I am still baffled at how weird it is, especially when it comes to how it handled the Jane Foster stuff. You can clearly tell the writers of the film took inspiration from the comics, because there are moments and lines from the film that mirror the source material. But in the movie, Jane's cancer arc did not feel as strong. Even though there were some good scenes with her, it didn't feel very weighty, as the movie was a light-hearted comedy full of jokes for a majority of its runtime. The comics themselves actually have a plethora of funny moments and are generally light-hearted in tone, but when it's time to be genuine, serious, and weighty, the comic can focus on being those things. Also, in the comics, Jane Foster is so much more worthy to be Thor. In the Mighty Thor series, the chemotherapy was working for Jane, but she gave it all up to be Thor and save the world. That is what made her worthy and noble. On the other hand, in Thor, Love and Thunder, Jane seeks out Mjolnir in order to heal her cancer, which is a more self-centered reason to be Thor. Of course, I think most of us would do the same thing that Jane did in the film, And I'm not saying that what she did was a bad thing, it's totally fine. But it's not something that I think should make you worthy of being Thor. In the movie, the main reason Jane can hold Mjolnir is because Thor told the hammer ages ago to protect Jane at all costs, which allows her the ability to carry it. Overall, I left the film disappointed, but not really angry or upset. Even though Jane's arc could have been executed better, I understood how difficult it was to insert this story in a 2-hour movie where the main plot was Thor saving a bunch of kidnapped children from the hands of Gorr the God Butcher. I left the film without much of a thought until a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago, I read the 12-issue Punisher series, written by Jason Aaron and illustrated by Jesus Saiz and Paul Azaceta, and it surpassed every expectation I had for it. I know that it is pretty divisive among Punisher fans, but for a person who doesn't read Punisher that much, this is the perfect one for me. I specifically loved the romantic drama and backstory of Frank's wife, who revealed what it was like to live with a man more in love with violence than with his own spouse. It's a tragic story full of violent action and emotion that I was impressed by when I read it. And since it was written by Jason Aaron and I loved it so much, I decided to finally read one of his most famous works, his first series on Thor. I cannot exaggerate how legendary and epic this comic is. The illustration by Esad Ribic and coloring by Dean White and Ives Vorsina is able to depict the beauty of the diverse world that is outer space, but also the darkness, weight, and chaos that consumes it in the story. The artists are able to render hopeless landscapes that make you feel the intense degree of despair and suffering the gods are in. The story is not child's play. It is not a joke. Thor has to face possibly the worst enemy yet, and Jason Aaron could not have written a more dramatic script. We see past, present, and future Thor risk their all to fight what seems like an unbeatable foe. Gorr the God Butcher has been killing gods for thousands of years because of his bad experience with the gods. Throughout his life, everyone around him has been faithful to their god, but they have only experienced endless death, suffering, and pain. When two gods battling each other crash down on his planet, Gorr is filled with nothing but rage, and in a vengeful quest, he murders them and vows to kill every god across space and time. He's a merciless murderer that makes Thor question his own worth. There's this sequence where Thor finds a list of inactive gods from the halls of the All-Knowing, and he visits them one by one, realizing almost every one of them is dead. I find god after god dead and rotting, some alone, some in piles so large I can see them from space. Each book from the Hall of the Lost leads me to more carnage, more eyeless dog attacks, but no God Butcher. There's no pattern to this spree. For 2,000 years, he has simply crisscrossed creation, killing any immortal he finds. What does it say about the gods in the universe that no one has ever even noticed or cared? What does it say about me? Gorr the God Butcher is one of modern Marvel's most legendary villains. He's extremely driven, unwavering in his pursuit of murdering all gods. He's terrifying, not just because of the god-killing weapon he wields and the god bomb he builds, but also because he makes Thor question whether his kind deserves to live. It's not just an action-packed tale. It has a bit of a philosophical and religious angle to it. Do gods deserve to live when a lot of them are selfish, chaotic, and indifferent towards mortals? This 11-issue saga of Gorr the God Butcher is legendary. The stakes are so high and the tale is narrated in such a grandiose manner that reinforces just how epic what you're witnessing is. If you like exciting superhero comics that are full of stakes and action and heart, this is one of the best ones you can choose to read, in my opinion. Finally reading this masterfully and carefully crafted ambitious story made me realize how much Thor Love and Thunder failed. While the comic sent me through a whirlwind of emotions and feelings, making me root for the Thors with such a fiery passion throughout, I looked like this for most of Love and Thunder. It wasn't just the constant jokes that made the movie feel like it had no stakes at all, but also Gore's really weird actions. In the comics and the movie, Gore's motive for killing gods is the belief that they are evil, selfish, and apathetic. But in the film, Gore kidnaps kids in order to lure Thor as he comes to the rescue, which means that he believes some gods are good on some level, and that does not make sense at all given his philosophy. Also, Thor having to rescue a bunch of kidnapped kids does not compare to the thrilling and exciting quest of killing Gore in order to save the life of all gods. Even though there were some good scenes with Gore, especially the opening scene that showcased his heartbreaking origin, he was ultimately kind of wasted in the movie. Actually, that's kind of my whole view toward the film. A waste. Look, if you like or love the film, I think that's totally fine. Art is subjective and we can all have our own opinion. There are some people who are really touched by this film, and if you are one of those people, I am not here to take that away from you. But from my experience, I think it's a tragedy that so many people paid to see a film they found pretty mediocre, when just a fraction of them read the comics that inspired it, which were made with so much love, passion, and care. Superhero movies have been very hit or miss over the past few years. Long gone were the days where every single one was something you could look forward to. And although there are memorable comic book films that are released each year that I absolutely adore, I can definitely say that overall the superhero movie scene is less of an exciting place to be compared to a few years ago. And with that, I think it's time to really encourage superhero fans who find the films stale to check out the comics they're based on. I feel like most people find comics to be intimidating to get into, but if you enjoyed this video and have watched this far, I gotta tell you that they're more accessible than you think. I didn't even read Jason Aaron's Thor saga in order. I read Unworthy Thor first, and then read Jane Foster's series, and then I finally read the saga of Gore the God Butcher. Nobody encourages you to read in that order, but I did it unintentionally, and I enjoyed my time with them still. Writers of superhero comics often give you the information you need when you read a comic, and starting at almost any issue 1 or volume 1 will most likely not leave you confused at what's going on. We can't really control the state of superhero films, and it's inevitable that we would be disappointed by some of them, whether it's due to a lack of good execution, our personal tastes and preferences, or a mix of both. But instead of constantly complaining about them, I think it would be much better to check out the wonderful world of comics. There are so many amazing stories to read, created by talented writers and artists that only get a fraction of the attention compared to their cinematic counterparts. Of course, not all of them are great, and I think sometimes the movies and shows do improve upon the comics, but nonetheless, I think the comics are worth checking out. There's no shortage of amazing and unique superhero stories published under Marvel and DC, and if you attempt to delve into them, I'm sure you'd end up having a pretty awesome time. But if you're lost and wondering where to start, I think the first 11 issues of Thor God of Thunder by Jason Aaron and Esad Ribic could be a pretty epic beginning for you. My name is Joshua C, and I will see you in the next comic book video.